Hey everyone, Elon here. I apologize for doing the podcast in this room with my dog right beside me. I'm getting ready to move to a new house, so things are packed up in boxes. So I'm doing this from the living room. And she's out. My dog is out. I wrestled with her, so she's going to be beside me the whole time now, just sleeping. Hopefully, unless she wakes up and makes some crazy noises. Anyway, I'm going to jump right in. Today I'm talking about the election. I think that's what everyone's talking about. Politics seems to be the only thing that anyone can talk about nowadays, whether that's fighting or having a debate. Hopefully people start having more debates instead of fights, but I'm not keeping my fingers crossed on that one. So what I'd like to talk about is essentially a couple things. I want to talk about kind of where we're at with this whole idea of election fraud, where I sit on it, and I'll be totally transparent with everyone. I think the notion that there's no election fraud, zero, like the Democrats are claiming and the news is claiming, and that they're trying to find Republicans to back them up on this, I think that the notion that it's absolutely zero is completely insane. I'm sorry, not to be rude. I just can't buy that. I can't buy that because, number one, I have a company and I ship something like 30,000 orders a month with USPS, and there's no chance in hell that even that aspect of it was done perfectly because they are such a mess with our products. And we're talking about, I do mass shipping, but I don't do nationwide mass shipping with unsolicited ballots that have to go and come back and have no verification that they're going to the right address and have nothing to back up the fact that these people even still live at those addresses. I mean, we know those voter lists are old. Anyway, regardless, I think that much anyone who's fair and objective can say with pure certainty, even Democrats, because for years Democrats have been saying and calling mail-in ballots with unsolicited mail-in ballots ripe with fraud. That's what they would say. They'd say this would ruin our democracy. It would be ripe with fraud. This is not a new concept for Democrats. It's only under Trump that it suddenly became a foolproof method to conduct an election. And so even Democrats who are being honest, I think, will at a minimum admit that for sure there's some fraud that took place. On the other end of it, I don't know if there was enough fraud to have an impact on the election. I really don't. No one does. That's the point of an investigation, which leads me to my point. Now, if you're asking me, do I think there is? No, I don't think there's actually going to be enough to overturn the election, but I think there'll be enough to prove that mail-in voting is not a viable way to conduct an election. And that's kind of, if that happens, so I'm going to go over all the three possibilities that can happen from an investigation, and I have to wonder why Democrats and the news are so against an investigation. Because all I hear since Trump has asked to legally, everything he's doing is legal, to legally follow the rule of law and conduct an investigation to determine that this election, which is anomalous, no one can argue otherwise. We have a pandemic. We sent out tens of millions of unsolicited ballots. Let's just determine that it was done with integrity in the contested states where there's already some irregularities that have popped up. And if you deny that there's irregularities, I can't help you. There have been. They should be investigated. So here we are, and all I hear from the media and from progressives or Democrats is concede. He needs to concede immediately. If he doesn't concede immediately, it's an embarrassment. He's a dictator if he doesn't concede immediately. And they're just going crazy. Like they can't let it go. Now, these are the same people who are calling for peace and unity. Not letting 70 million Americans who've been called racist, who've been compared to Hitler, who we had a Russia investigation, which was proven to be bogus. We had the dossier, which was proven to be bogus, and amounts to FISA abuse at a minimum, where we had Americans illegally spied on, all because of people being salty that Trump won. Really, that's what it all came down to, all of these things. I mean, it just didn't end for 4 years. Hillary never really, she conceded, but then she went and said the election was stolen from me. And it's because of Russia. It's because of this. It's because of that. And Nancy Pelosi herself said Biden under no circumstances should concede if he loses that Trump will have stolen the election. There was already a narrative of voter suppression. So all these people talking about conspiracies and you have to play by the rules and the whole world is watching and he needs to concede. Trump is playing by the rules. Creating conspiracies of voter suppression when we had the highest voter turnout in history is not playing by the rules. And calling people racist for 4 years, the same people who you apparently now want peace and unity with. A complete contradiction. You should not want peace and unity with a racist. If you really believe that Trump supporters are racist, the idea that you want peace and unity with them, very disingenuous, or it makes no sense to me. But anyway, that's your position now because you won. Okay, cool. Anyway, moving on from that. There are only three possibilities that an investigation can reveal. And everyone in the country, regardless of where you if you're watching this and you're against everything I'd say, if you say, no, I disagree. If one of those things happen, it's terrible. And that's why I don't want an investigation deep down. Like, self-reflect on this. Then you have to question what you believe in. because there's only three things that can happen. Here's the three things that can happen with an investigation. One, determines that there was no or very, very, very minimal voter fraud to the point of having no impact on an election and proving that voter fraud and that mail-in ballots are viable for the future. And now we can look at it and say, hey, mail-in ballots really do work. All these people who are scared, these 70 million Americans can feel more at peace knowing that there was an investigation done. Trump can step down, he can concede. So far, we don't have if that happens and then he still boards himself up in the White House and says, I'm not leaving under no circumstance, it's still unjust. I think at that point, you'll see the support for Donald Trump die down very quickly. Okay. And it's very hard for me to believe that Donald Trump will do that. So that's option number one. That helps your case. That puts Trump in an impossible position. He has to concede, and he has to do it in a way that makes sense, that now everyone can support him stepping down. Hey, we did our investigation. All the 70 million Americans who felt disenfranchised, felt like maybe this election didn't go their way and are questioning our democracy, can say thank you. And that peace and unity you're talking about, that can finally happen. Here's option number two. Option number two, we do find a lot of irregularities. We do find a lot of voter fraud, but not enough to affect the results of the election. That's still super important. What does that tell us? That maybe in the future we shouldn't use mail-in ballots. Maybe mail-in ballots are not a viable way to run an election. And despite Trump losing, we at least learned something. And 70 million Americans, again, who are very, very worried about our democracy can say, you know what? The fact that we had this investigation, the fact that we got to the bottom of it, even though Trump lost, I feel better now. I feel like at least now I know the truth. I know that Trump lost. But I do know that mail-in ballots are not something I'm going to tolerate in the future, and we as a country need to change that. And I think that would be a fair conclusion. And again, I don't see Trump boarding himself up in the White House with this situation and, going and becoming a gangster and sitting in there with an army and being like, we're going to do a coup and take over the government. I just don't see it, even though the media is saying that now there's a Trump coup that's on the way to happen because he's following the law and doing an investigation. I think if you actually listen to the media, people always talk about conspiracy theories. Man, the media has become amazing at conspiracy theories and dividing people. Anyway, I don't want to get off point because I'm rambling today. I got a lot of energy, even though I just wrestled with my dog. The third thing that can happen, number three, is that it actually is enough voter fraud to overturn the election or enough to make the Supreme Court step in and then figure out what to do. Now, this is probably the part that a lot of people deep down are scared about, if I'm being honest. Is it likely? No, it's crazy unlikely that this is the case, if we're being honest. I don't believe it's a likely outcome, but I do believe that maybe two is a likely outcome. Anyway, let's say we do discover this. One, I just got to be honest here to all the hypocrites watching. The people calling for peace and unity and saying that this is so unjust and that conservatives are acting crazy for wanting an investigation. You are the same people who will go out and burn the country down if this got overturned. You would have burned the country down if Trump won. That would have been the result. You wouldn't have gone about it legally. You would have gone out and rioted. That's why there were people boarding up their businesses on the street in every Democratic state, literally boarding up their businesses with people waiting on the streets to riot because of a potential Trump victory. That didn't happen when Biden won. What you had was a legal battle that ensued. So spare me the hypocrisy, but deep down we know this is what everyone is scared of, even though, again, like I said, it's statistically unlikely. And you shouldn't be scared of it, because if, God forbid for you, it does come back that way, you are preserving the integrity of democracy. Whether you like Biden or you like Trump, there is something at play that is bigger than both of them. And I'll be honest, I don't care really on the outcome in the end of the day. I don't think it's going to end the United States, whoever wins the election. I think people are becoming so fundamental in their views that it's become so extreme and we're in such a state of panic. Everyone needs to take a step back and breathe. There's a lot of things about Biden I don't like. I can go into them. I'm not going to in this video. Regardless, we have to be able to accept whoever wins, that democracy, that maintaining our democracy is the fundamental priority in all of this. Whoever that means wins. Like, I'm not a Biden fan, but if I'm actually looking at options 1 and 2, and I'm saying if we find that, hallelujah. If we find that Biden won fair and square, I will be happy for the country because the will of the people will be heard. And 70 million Americans who like Trump are willing to feel that way. The question is, are you willing to feel that way? Are you who likes Biden willing to feel like democracy supersedes your desire to win? Win, 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 win. Orange Man Hitler, win, win, win. And this brings me to my next point. And it's kind of about how we've gotten to become so fundamental. And the entire point here is that I've personally gone out and conducted a poll on all my friends who voted for Biden. And there goes my computer tweeting again, right on Biden. I don't know why my computer tweets. I haven't figured out how to turn it off. Anyway, the result, shockingly, and I watch all news stations. I watch, CNN, MSNBC. I watch Fox. I watch Al Jazeera. I watch everything. Anyway, the results always came back the same two things. And this is really the point of this entire video. So the first thing I wanted to cover, the first topic I felt was important, was the election and election fraud. We got that out of the way. But now I want to talk about Democrats 2024. And it's very, very interesting because the two answers that came back in every single person I talked to about why did you vote for Joe Biden had nothing to do with Joe Biden. And I think we all know this deep down. I think we all knew that no one was actually voting for Joe Biden. No one's voting for a super old white dude with a racist history who has essentially helped destabilize Libya, passed the most vicious crime bill. Both things, by the way, which have directly affected my family, my wife's family. So I don't think anyone actually is voting for the dude. They're voting against Trump. And in what way were they voting against Trump? The same two results were Trump is racist, as extremists calling him Hitler or worse than Hitler, which is surprisingly common nowadays. Trump is worse than Hitler, or all his supporters are racist and Trump is racist. He represents the systemic racism of America, and the left did an amazing job. Amazing, I have to say, from a marketing perspective, as someone who owns a company, they did an incredible job of convincing people this. And I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. Why? Because I've shown people a video of Trump condemning white supremacy 50 times, asking them, do you believe Trump condemned white supremacy? And even after watching the video, they say no. Now, this degree of brainwashing is so extreme that I'll never try and convince you that Trump is not a racist, because if I can show you videos of him condemning white supremacy 50 times, you watch it and you look me right in the face. And I believe you when you tell me, no, he still didn't condemn white supremacy in the KKK. You're in La La Land. There's no real debate that can be had. So that's the first thing that came back. And a huge percentage of people, almost everyone, told me it's because he's racist. He's a vile human being. So character attack on Trump was the number one reason people voted for Biden. Number two, COVID. They created this narrative that he killed 200,000 Americans. And again, they did an amazing job with this too. Despite Biden saying that when Trump closed the flights that Trump was xenophobic, despite Nancy Pelosi being out in Chinatown celebrating and calling Trump a racist right in the middle of coronavirus, despite the hypocrisy around BLM, despite the hypocrisy right now, and when I say BLM, I don't mean the movement. I have no problem with the movement going out and protesting. I mean that they did it in the middle of a pandemic and were celebrated by Democrats. At a minimum, tell them, hey, this is not smart. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. Millions of Americans on top of each other is not the best move. If this virus is as bad as everyone says, maybe we should take a step back and not be out on the street, millions of people on top of each other. But they wouldn't do that. They egged it on, and then they said, well, racism is more important. Okay, you gotta pass on that one. Racism is more important than the virus. Apparently, your father dying alone in the hospital is not more important because they wouldn't let you in to see him, or your business that keeps you alive is not more important. But at this exact moment, 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, racism suddenly became more important. I get it. I buy it. Okay, I'll give you a pass on that one. What I can't give you a pass on is just maybe 10 days ago, Trump supporters were called super spreaders for meeting up outside and rallying for him. And the media would not stop. I mean, we're talking about Trump supporters are spreading the coronavirus. They're the reason for the coronavirus, 200,000 dead Americans. And then immediately the day after Biden wins, tens of thousands of people are on top of each other, and the media refuses to condemn it, and they call it a historical moment and a celebration, and we should all be celebrating this, and the people out on the street aren't a risk because they're wearing masks, which isn't true. I mean, they showed video of people taking off their masks and drinking champagne and shouting in each other's faces. I mean, the hypocrisy on that one is just astounding, but it worked. It worked. Somehow that's reason number two, coronavirus. Trump killed everyone. Trump is a mass murderer. So Trump is Hitler and he's a mass murderer. Those are two very powerful narratives, in all fairness, to get someone to vote against someone. And it had to be that powerful because who was our alternative? Biden. Like I said, a guy who literally helped destabilize Libya, resulting in the largest slave trade in the Middle East today. a guy who passed the most vicious prison bill against minorities, a guy who fought against desegregation and was praised for it, who said that black kids will turn schools into a racial jungle. And the defense for this is, oh, well, he's changed. He's apologized. He's a great guy now. And I'm like, well, just like 2 months ago, the guy said that if you don't vote for him, you're not black, and that black people have no diversity, and that thanks to black women putting food on shelves, I can eat. I mean, the guy hasn't changed that much. He's still going out and making crazy racist statements. You can blame that on his senility, but I mean, in all fairness, the guy really still does make racist statements. Combined with his history, it's a little bit hard to believe. In the 8 years he was VP, he did absolutely zero for minorities. He didn't reverse the crime bill, which he put into play. I mean, all these people are like, well, he's sorry about it now. Then why didn't he get rid of it for 8 years? Trump got rid of it. Trump did the First Step Act. Where was Biden on that? Again, I'm going on a tangent here because I'm getting too into it. Irrelevant. You win. You got those 2 points. Trump is Hitler. I won't convince you otherwise. I think the notion that people compare him to Hitler is insane, and that he killed 200,000 people. That's what you want to believe. That's why you voted for Biden. Fair enough. I'm not going to convince you it's not true. What I am going to tell you is that Democrats just blew their load. That's it. They just let it out. They just climaxed. There's nothing left for them to do. I will not buy, and many Americans in 2024, even the ones who believe Trump is Hitler today, will not buy that the next candidate that runs as a conservative is Hitler, which is point number one, and that is responsible for killing 200,000 people. You just don't have those two things anymore. And those are the two reasons. Without either one, by the way, you wouldn't have won the election. There wouldn't be a Biden win right now if COVID didn't happen. I think most people deep down know that because they politicized it so well. And you wouldn't have a Biden win if you couldn't convince everyone that Trump is worse than Hitler. So you're not going to have COVID in 2024. You're not going to have Hitler in 2024. So, or Satan, because he's worse than Hitler. So what are you going to have? Policy. Now, I've asked a lot of people, I've literally spoken to people who voted for Biden. I said, well, what policies of his do you agree with? They don't. They don't agree with far left policies. Well, Biden actually might not be far left. In all fairness, my personal opinion about Biden is that when he was younger, very much a moderate Democrat, very establishment, very much establishment, which is fine. He wants to get rich. He wants to be a politician. Forget all the corruption and Hunter Biden laptop, Russia propaganda, whatever it is. He's actually not the far left one, but the left as a party, the Democrats as a party have gone farther and farther and farther left. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Biden, especially from his own VP, from the squad. AOC's already coming out and causing a stir. And just the general consensus across the Democratic Party is that it went from here, I'm going right, but that's left. Okay, so they're just more extreme in their views. And how do I know this? Because here's one area that is fascinating that Democrats have really moved on, and that's late-term abortion. And it's gotten to the point where people now, and I think that people said this, under Obama, I used to ask this question. No one agreed with this. Is it okay to have an abortion at any point, 8 months, if the woman chooses? And the answer I get nowadays from most Democrats is there should never be any term limits under any circumstances. For men, the excuse is, I may not agree with it, but I'm a man, I shouldn't have a say. And from women, they say, well, no one should control a woman's body. I'm not going to have an abortion debate right now. I'll make another video about that. But that is a position that I'm just stating that was not one you would hear from Democrats in 2008, 2012, even 2016. Yet it's one that the left has managed to kind of make pervasive, a generalized kind of new motto that never at any point should the government have any say over a woman's body. Okay, so you don't believe in term limits anymore. But these extreme views, the Green New Deal, when people see the effects of it, unfortunately, all these things, Medicare for all. I've lived in Canada, I've lived in Europe, I've lived in the Middle East. I know what healthcare for all looks like. It does not work, sadly, especially in the United States with 350 million Americans, or 330, with a whole culture and densely populated cities that just aren't conducive to that kind of system. Regardless, these policies are not as liked as people actually believe. It's just that what people are doing is following a trend. So you no longer have the fundamental thing, which is Hitler and COVID. So what are you running on in 2024? Are you the left? I'm asking any Democrat watching, go ahead and comment below and let me know. Are you running on far left policies, the Green New Deal, healthcare for all, no abortion, no legislation against abortion whatsoever at any point, no regulation whatsoever. Like if a woman wants to have it at 8.5 months, that's her choice. She doesn't have to explain why. They should just do it. Are these things that you're actually running on, or are you running on more center left Democrat, old school Democrat ideals? And there's obviously a problem in the party that happened immediately after Biden won because the victory wasn't as big as people thought. And it kind of points to the problem. It points to kind of the response that people are reluctantly voting for Biden. People are reluctantly taking someone whose policies they disagree with over voting for Hitler and a guy who killed 200,000 people. And again, you won't have that opportunity again in 2024. So start asking yourself, what do you believe in? There won't be a Hitler to be against. You'll have to believe in something. You can't believe against something. You'll have to be for something. And so that's what's coming. And I think a lot of people are kind of stuck in this state. You know, Biden said, oh, I'm not going to lock down the country again. He is going to lock down the country again. Most likely. He's kind of hinting at it already. There's already people responding to it who voted for him who are upset about it. But just ask yourself, do I really believe in all these far left ideals that are starting to take over the party? And if you don't, and you voted for Biden, then realize that next time it comes around and they try and convince you that there's another, because I mark my words now, the left is not going to change. They're going to double down on the everyone is racist who disagrees with us. Everyone who disagrees with us is responsible for killing people. Everyone who disagrees with us or find a new tragedy in the world that every conservative is responsible for. When they do that again, ask yourself how likely it is that after Trump, another Hitler who killed 200,000 people came along. Is that really what you believe at that point? Because I'm planning ahead here because I know where this is going, and you can come back and watch this video in 2024. I guarantee you that the conservative, whoever's running on the Republican ticket will be vilified to the point of them trying to make him out to be Hitler. And it's going to be a lot harder if it's a Dan Crenshaw, if it's whoever it is, right? Ted Cruz. You're not going to have a guy who is as abrasive and tweets like a maniac like Trump. So start planning. If you're a diehard Democrat, you don't even care if you're like a far left. Now these are your ideals and this is what you want all over the country and you want to convince everyone. Start coming up with at least a tactic to defend your ideals. That's what I'm asking you. Like at least make a rational argument on policy, because everyone who voted this time around, every single person I asked did not vote on policy. So you have to be careful on that. They actually voted reluctantly against your policies, but still for you because of Trump. Or if you're not, question what you believe. If you're not one of those people, just ask yourself, hey, maybe it's okay for me to look at the other side and see what they're proposing and see if that makes my life better and makes everyone's lives better. In the end of the day, no one's out intentionally to hurt you. They're just out to push what they believe. And I would actually say if you do believe in big government, if you do believe the government's stepping in and taking control of your life and you know, mask mandates and lockups and putting businesses out and not letting people who are sick see their family before they die, and you know, all these things, the Green New Deal, which essentially will destroy a lot of infrastructure in this country and have massive impact on your taxes, on how the world actually works. If you really believe that's the viable way to go forward, and gives the government an immense amount of control, by the way, read about the Green New Deal and the type of control it gives the government. It's a power play. If you believe that, then by all means vote for it, because I'm pro-democracy, which is what I hope you're for too. I hope you're for true democracy. So I suggest everyone, and I'm not saying this in a condescending way because I'm always questioning what I believe in too, just go out and research for 2024 policy, because that's what we should be voting on. There's not going to be another Hitler. There's not going to be another COVID. Hopefully not. And so that's the point of this video. And I hope you enjoyed watching. If you like it, just subscribe, hit the like button, blah, 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 blah. I'll make lots more videos. Thanks very much.